Magandang tanghali Pilipinas. At maraming salamat po dun sa mga bumati sa atin nung kaarawan natin kahapon. Talaga naman pong nakaka-touch yung mga dami ng bumate, and I hope to spend many more years in service of the nation. Thank you very much po for your greetings. Unang balita po natin, na-extend po ng Land Transportation Office ang student permit, driver's license, conductor's license ng mga authorized persons outside of residence or APORs. Matatandaan na ayon sa IATF Resolution number 79 na inaprubahan noong Oktubre 15 na pwede nang lumabas ang nasa edad 15 pataas hanggang 65 anyos. Kaugnay nito, nag-issue ng LTO ng mga rules sa application ng student driver permit or driver's license, conductor's license na nag-expire noong mga panahon na hindi sila pinapayagang lumabas. Una, walang penalty sa pag-a-apply ng renewal ng driver's license at conductor's license na nag-expire nung panahong mayroong restriction. Pangalawa, dahil sa inaasahang pagdagsa ng mga aplikante, ang validity ng student permit, driver's license at conductor's license na nag-expire nung panahon na mayroong restriction ay na-extend po hanggang December 31, 2020. Pangatlo, ang registration ng mga sasakyan na may plate number na nagtatapos sa 6, 7 at 8 ay extended hanggang 31 October 2020. Samantala, ang mga plate number na nagtatapos ng 9 at 0 ay extended hanggang ika-31 ng Disyembre 2020. Pang-apat, ang mga rules na ito ay para lamang sa mga edad 17 hanggang 21 at mga 60 hanggang 65 anyos kung saan nag-expire ang kanilang mga lisensya nung panahon sila ay dapat na nasa bahay lamang. Bilang pag-alala sa mga mahal na yumao, sa nalalapit na undas ay inuulit namin na lahat ng mga sementeryo, memorial parks, columbarium sa buong bansa ay isasara sa mga bisita mula October 29 hanggang November 4, 2020. Kaya kung may pagkakataon kayo ngayon bago mag-29 ay dumalaw na po kayo. Pero papaalalahanan po natin na pagdalaw nyo sa mga sementeryo at mga crematoriums at mga columbariums, kinakailangan magsuot ng face mask at face shield at merong social distancing. Pinapayagan din po ang 30% ng venue capacity. Magandang balita naman po sa mga miyembro ng Pag-ibig, mayroong inalok na Social Housing Loan Restructuring Program ang Pag-ibig sa kanilang mga miyembro. May 6 na buwan na payment relief na ibinigay kung saan ang pagbabayad ng restructured loans ay magre-resume sa March 2021. March 2021. Isang paglilinaw mula sa DPWH tungkol sa mga manggagawang Chino sa Binondo Intramuros Bridge at Estrella Pantalon Bridge na pinondohan ng bansang China. Bagamat tama po yung sinabi natin na dapat bigyan sila ng flexibility dahil ito po ay donasyon, ang sabi po ng DPWH, unang-una, karamihan daw po ng manggagawa sa mga tulay nito ay Pilipino pa rin at ang mga Chino mga manggagawa ay dahil meron pong mga specialized technology ito. Punta naman po tayo sa COVID updates. Ito po ang global updates ayon sa Johns Hopkins. Mayroon na po tayong 41 milyon or 41,109,752 na tinamaan ng COVID sa buong mundo. Meron na rin po tayong 1,129,185 na mga namatay dahil po sa COVID sa buong mundo. Nangunguna pa rin po ang Estados Unidos. Ito po ay 8 million cases, 221,000 deaths. Pumapangalawa ang India, 7.6 million cases, 115,000 deaths. Ang Brazil ay pumapangatlo, 5.2 million, 154,000 deaths. Ang Russia po ay pang-apat, 1.4 million, 24,000 deaths. At Argentina, 1 million at 27,500 deaths. Dito naman po sa ating bayan, humigit 4 na milyon po ang natest na natin sa pamamagitan ng PCR. Meron na po tayong mga tested na mga kababayan natin na 4,187,385. Ito po ay ginawa sa 114 licensed RT-PCR laboratories at 35 licensed gene expert laboratories. Meron po tayo ngayong 43,990 na aktibong cases. Sa numerong ito ay 11.6 po ang asymptomatic, ang mild po ay 83%, ang severe ay 2% at ang critical ay 3.4%. Naka-flash naman po sa ating mga screen ang critical capacity ng ating mga ospital. Makikita nyo po ng ating ICU beds on a national basis. Meron pa tayong 53% available. Isolation beds, 58% available. Ang ward beds ay 63% available at ang ventilators ay 78% available. Hindi naman po ibig sabihin, palibasa marami pa tayong bakante sa ating mga hospital na tayo magpapabaya na po, no? Alalahanin natin ang sinabi mismo ng ating presidente, kinakailangan mask, hugas, iwas. Dito po nagtatapos ang ating briefing. Meron po tayong dalawang panauhin. Unang-una, ang aking mabuting kaibigan, si Budget Secretary Wendell Avisado, para po sabihin sa atin kung magkano pa ang natitira sa Bayanihan 1 at magkano na po ang nailabas ng gobyerno sa Bayanihan 2. Maya-maya rin po sasabahan tayo ni Ambassador Chito Santa Romana. Siya po ang ating ambahador sa China para naman malaman natin ang mga updates pagdating po sa mga Chinese vaccines na inaasahan nating magagamit natin dito sa ating bansa. Unahin po muna natin si Secretary Wendell Avisado. Sec, pakilinaw lang po, ang sabi po ng minorya sa Senado, marami pa pong pondo ang hindi nagagastos sa Bayanihan 1 at ang sabi rin po nila 6 na bilyon lamang out of 140 billion ang nagastos sa Bayanihan 2. The floor is yours, Secretary Wendell Avisado. Sec, wala kang audio, paki-unmute.
Opo.
Okay, thank you, Sec. The floor is yours.
Maraming salamat po para malinawan tayong lahat po. Wala na po natirang budget ng Bayanihan 1. Nagamit na po natin lahat yan. At dito na nga po tayo ngayon nakatutok sa Bayanihan 2. Sa Bayanihan 2 naman, ang latest po natin sa ngayon ay nakapag-release na tayo ng 4 billion plus at nakasalang na po, nasa Office of the President na po for approval. Yun namang ibang request for release, no? At masabi ko lang dito na ang mga naipadala na po natin sa Office of the President for approval ayun pong sa yung naipadala na natin sa on process po ngayon. Nahanap lang yung sa memorandum for the President. On process po ngayon yung DOTR na 9.5 billion assistance for PUB drivers. Tapos Small Business Corporation 10 billion. Ito po yung sa tourism. Wala po kasing direktang budget ang tourism, kundi yan nakapaloob sa Small Business Corporation para capital infusion for COVID-19 assistance to restart enterprises and other lending programs, internet subsidy extended to MSME, cooperatives, hospital, tourism industry, and OFWs. Sa DOLE naman, mayroon tayong AKAP na 2 billion para sa OFWs. DOLE pa rin, 3.1 billion cash for work for unemployed and involuntary separated displaced workers or employees in the tourism industry. So, nandun po sa Office of the President ngayon ang request ng DSWD na 6 billion at sa Department of Labor and Employment naman na rather ang sa Department of Labor is 8 billion, Department of Social Welfare and Development 6 billion, Department of Agriculture 11.6 out of 24 billion, yung pa lang po ang pinapadala nila sa atin. At sa Department of Health naman ay 20.5 billion para sa health-related responses. Yun namang sa Department of Agriculture, yung plant, yung 6 billion ng DSWD for AICS, yung assistance to individuals in crisis situation. At yung sa labor naman, ay tulong panghanap buhay, yung tupad program po nila. So sa kabuuan po, malaki na po ang nakaatang at nakahandang perang gugugulin po ng ating pamahalaan under Bayanihan 2. Kami naman po, ginagawa po namin lahat ng aming magagawa na ma-aksyonan kaagad. Lamang, alam naman ng mga kalihim natin yan na meron namang proseso. No? Sasubmit sila ng special budget request, tapos yung budget execution document pertaining to the financial plan, another budget execution document pertaining to your monthly disbursement program, tsaka yung justification. So lahat po na ito ay na-evaluate po. Tsaka po pagka hindi naman po sila nawawalan ng pundo po, no? Ayan, hindi mangyayari dahil habang pinoprocess po namin ang request nila, meron po silang pera pang nagagastos. Dahil po binabantayan po namin talaga na kahit na anong oras, mayroon po silang pera habang pinoprocess po yung additional. Hindi naman po kasi po pwedeng ilagak namin lahat yung pera na alam namin na marami pa po silang hindi nagagasta. Ganun po, parte po kasi ng mandato namin yan on budget management. So sana po maunawaan lang na hindi po dinidelay ng DBM ang pondo ng gobyerno. Bagkus yan po ang trabaho namin na siguruhin na may pondo ang bawat ahensya ng pamahalaan po.
Well, Sec Avisado, I hope you don't mind. Pero for the record, out of 140 billion po sa Bayanihan 2, magkano na po yung nailabas natin?
Yun na nga po, ang nailabas na natin as stated earlier is 4 billion, 15 million something. Tapos on process na po yung DSWD na binanggit ko, yung nasa Office of the President na nga po, that's about 46.2 billion. Tapos there's another 24.6 billion na on process. So lumalabas na po yung effort dito at lamang nakasaad kasi sa batas mismo, that's only the President who can approve of all of this. So kailangan ipaabot po namin sa kanya para pag naaprubahan niya, mag-i-issue na kami ng SARO at saka NCA.
Okay. So mahigit kumulang kalahati na po, no, ang na-authorize na ipalabas ng ating DBM. Maraming salamat.
Ay, opo.
Oo, Secretary Wendell
Salamat
Avisado. And I'm sure our friends in the media will have some questions for you later, no. Now si Ambassador Chito po, hahabol po siya, no. Habang wala pa po si Ambassador Chito and he is in Beijing itself para ikwento sa atin kung ano ng mga hakbang na ginawa ng Pilipinas para makaangkat po ng mga vaccines na mga vaccines na gawa po sa China, ay tumuloy na muna tayo sa ating open forum at pag dumating na sa atin si Ambassador Chito ay bibigay po natin sa kanyang floor. Unang-una, Yusek Roque, please.
Yes, thank you, Secretary Roque, and good afternoon, Secretary Avisado. Secretary Roque, belated happy birthday po.
Thank you po.
Question from Chris Jose of Remate, reaction po sa isinagawang kilos protesta ng iba't ibang progresibong grupo sa Menjola kahapon. Kinundena nila ang mga umano'y pang-aabuso ng gobyerno, partikular na ang dinanas ng political prisoner na si Reyna May Nasino. Binatikos nila ang kabiguan na umano'y masuportahan ang sektor ng mga magsasaka sa panahon ng pandemya. Ipinababasura nila ang anti-terror law at ipinanawagan ng hustisya para kay Randy Echanes at Baby River, ang anak ni Nasino.
Well, alam niyo po, ang karapatan ng malayang pananalita ay garansyado po na ating saligang batas. Ngayon pa mang, ang aking pakiusap lang po, panahon po ng COVID. At kahit kayo po ay lumalaban at kalaban ng gobyerno, pinangangalagaan pa namin ang inyong kalusugan. So ang pakiusap po, sundin natin hanggang 10 tao lang po ang pagtitipon-tipon dahil ayaw po namin kayong magkasakit. Miski kayo po ay walang ginawa, kung hindi labanan ng gobyerno, Pilipino pa rin po kayo at may obligasyon pa rin kaming isalba kayo kung kayo ay magkakasakit. Make it easier for everyone po. Huwag pong magtipon-tipon.
Ang second question po ni Chris Jose, pinapayagan na ba ang gawa ng kilos protesta sa lansangan?
Ay, hindi pa po, no? Ang sabi ko po, hanggang 10 lang nga po ang pwede magtipon-tipon. Ulitin ko po, no? 91% of the Filipinos approve ng ginagawa ng ating presidente, 5% are undecided, 5% do not approve. So yung 5% po, kabahagi ang mga realista, Pilipino pa rin po kayo, obligasyon pa rin namin itaguyod ang inyong kalusugan, huwag po magtipon-tipon, ayaw namin kayong ma-COVID.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Roque.
Maraming salamat, Yusek. Punta tayo kay Joyce Balancho, please. Maraming salamat nga pala sa mga greetings, mga video greetings ng mga taga-Malacanang Press Corps. Talaga nakakataba po ng puso. Maraming salamat po. Joyce?
Yes, sir. Belated happy birthday po sa inyo. I hope na nakapag-enjoy po kayo kahapon kahit may trabaho po kayo.
Opo, kaya wala po tayong boses ngayon. Dalawang kanta lang
Mukhang napa-video okay kayo, sir.
Oo. Go ahead, please.
Opo. Doon lang po sa sinabi na update ni DBM Secretary Wendell Avisado. On the part of the Office of the President, Secretary, meron ba tayong timeline dun sa approval na hinihintay pa for fund release ng ibang departments?
Well, alam ko po that it will be released as soon as possible. Sinisigurado lang po ng Office of the President na kinakailangan talaga yung mga pondo na i-release. Yun lang po yun.
Opo. And then, nabanggit nyo rin po sa last interview sa inyo, Secretary Roque, pag-uusapan ng IATF yung proposal ng Metro Mayors na iangat yung venue capacity ng mga simbahan to 30%. Ito po ba yung napag-usapan na kahapon and may decision na po ba?
Mamayang hapon po ang meeting ng IATF. Kaya po naaantala ang meetings ng IATF dahil sa mga budget hearings po, no, kung saan ang DOH mismo ay humarap po sa Kamara at sa Senado. So mamayang hapon po, i-discuss yan.
Alright. Secretary Roque, si Senator Nancy Binay is expressing concern dito po sa maraming Chinese nationals na mga bata na pumapasok po sa bansa as retirees. So meron po dito mga 35 years old pero retirees po sila pumapasok sa Pilipinas. And data from Philippine Retirement Authority show that more than 27,000 Chinese nationals have retired in the Philippines. At ang sabi po ng Senadora, possibly they're using yung multiple entry visa nila to illegally work in the Philippines. Now, is the Palace aware of this? It is a cause of concern po ba para sa atin? And what are we planning to do about it?
Alam nyo, itong Special Retirees Visa, kinakailangan magpasok sila ng kapital. So, ang kapalit po niyan, kinakailangan magpasok ng foreign exchange at kapital para magkaroon po ng negosyo na mag-iimpleo ng mas marami pang Pilipino. Pero naintindihan ko naman po na yung Board of Directors ng PRA, which has its own charter, will meet and consider whether or not to lift the minimum age for the Special Retirees Visa. And kami naman po, we will defer to the specialized decision of the Board of the Philippine Retirement Authority.
Can I go quickly lang po kay Secretary Avisado?
Yes, please.
Apo. Secretary Avisado, some senators are expressing dismay for the little budget proposed for the newly created Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. Nasa 4 billion lang daw po ang proposed budget for that. At si Senator Franklin Dillon is comparing itong budget na to sa ilalaang budget para sa intelligence and confidence funds na nasa 9.6 billion. Now, the senator is saying nasa 6.5 million ang housing backlogs po natin sa Pilipinas. So how are we going to address this given this very little budget for the newly created department?
You know, DSHUD has its own mandate, no? And if we look at the law itself, it says that it will be the sole and main planning and policy making, regulatory, program coordination, and performance monitoring of all housing, human settlement, and urban development concerns. And therefore, housing production is not with the DSHUD. Housing production is with National Housing Authority. And the National Housing Authority receives minimal subsidy from the national government because it has its own corporate funds. So that's the reason why there's not much funds that we can see at the department itself because its function is not on housing production po.
All right. Thank you so much, Secretary Roque.
Thank you, Joyce. Kung pwede lang po ako magdagdag dyan. Yung mga emergency housing requirements naman natin, kapag tayo po ay may mga kababayang nasalanta ng sakuna, yan naman po ay manggagaling po sa budget ng NDRMMC. At meron pong 20 billion budget, hindi lang po para sa mga nasirang mga bahay, kundi sa iba pang mga perwisyo na nadudulot ng mga kalamidad. Okay, bago po tayo magpatuloy, we'd like to welcome Ambassador Chito Santarumana. Ambassador, thank you for joining us today in our press briefing. Sir, ano na pong balita? Ano na pong mga stages, ang mga bakuna at ano na pong hakbang na nagawa natin para masiguro na ating mga kababayan magkakaroon po ng mga bakuna pag natapos na po ang development dito sa China? The floor is yours, Ambassador.
Thank you very much for having me, Secretary Harry. It's a pleasure to be here. What we're doing here, what the Philippine Embassy in Beijing is doing, is really facilitating the contacts between DOST and DOH and the Chinese side, no, regarding the vaccine. As you know, the Chinese right now are in the advanced stage, no? Nasa phase 3. They have at least 3 to 4 vaccines that are now being tried in China, no? They reported yesterday that, or the other day, that one vaccine is about to complete the phase 3 trial, and so far the results have been fairly good. There's been no report of an adverse reaction. There is another vaccine that is under phase 3 trial and is also undergoing international experiment in Brazil and the UAE. And in the UAE, or in the Middle East, as far as I know, there are some Filipinos, no, over 1,000 Filipinos that have been involved in the phase 3 trial. This is important because the vaccines being developed in China have been tried among Chinese patients or among Chinese citizens, but it is important to try it also with other citizens of other countries, no? That is why the Chinese have a joint program with Indonesia. Some Indonesian patients are being treated, are undergoing this phase 3 experiment. In Brazil, there's quite a number of Brazilians undergoing it. So they're trying it with different nationalities. In China, they're already using the vaccine on an emergency basis for their frontliners. So lahat ng frontliners, particularly in the hospitals dealing with COVID, are already undergoing or have already been given the vaccine. The same with airport personnel, those dealing with customs and those dealing with coastal ports, no? Because in China, basically under control na yung local community transmission. Their problem really is how to deal with what they call imported cases. Those coming in from abroad, Chinese or foreigners bringing in the virus, and that's why very strict yung testing and quarantine for international arrivals. But back to the vaccine, so they hope to go into mass production soon. And so the question is yung distribution. As you know, the Philippines is one of the priority countries. Now, this was an agreement during the phone conversation between President Duterte and President Xi, and this was reiterated when Secretary Locsin was here and had an exchange or a conversation with State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi. However, distribution will be a challenge, even if we're in the priority list. One, because the Chinese companies we have been in contact with have said that we need, or the recipient countries should make sure that they have the capability for receiving the vaccine. Kailangan kasi yung tinatawag na cold chain storage, no? These vaccines have to be stored in the conditions, na freezing conditions. Otherwise, if exposed to a tropical weather or to normal weather conditions, the vaccine could lose its effectiveness. No, so of course these are matters for the experts to deal with, but basically to point out that from our discussions with the Chinese pharmaceutical companies, they pointed out that the next challenge really is the distribution and the deployment of the vaccine. Hopefully, mass production and distribution will happen in the near future, no? As early as November or December in terms of production, and it will depend on our capability to receive the vaccines in terms of our facilities, no? In terms of distribution. So the prospects are bright in terms of a breakthrough in vaccine. At least, as far as I know, in China, there's a possibility for 1 or 2 vaccines that will be approved here soon. And of course, they have to undergo their own requirements in the Philippines, no? Because the Philippines, you have to clear FDA requirements, DOST, DOH. So this is something I think that these agencies are already preparing for. So that's what the update I can give you in terms of the vaccine development and the vaccine situation here in China.
Maraming salamat, Ambassador Chito. So, lilinawin ko lang po, kasi po dito sa Pilipinas, paulit-ulit sinasabi ni Presidente, the Chinese have the vaccine. So, parang totoo po, no? They already have the vaccine na binibigay na nila sa kanilang mga frontliners. Tama po ito, no? Tama po
Yes,
ito,
yes.
no? Yes.
As a matter of fact,
opo.
beyond the frontliners, there have been reports in Chinese media that certain areas in China, some local governments are already distributing it or deploying it for certain citizens, no? So merong nangyayari dyan in a city in near Shanghai, in East China, na nag-uumpisa na yan. And certainly the company executives and employees of the different pharmaceutical companies involved in the vaccine development, they have volunteered to be part of the different phases of the trial, at halos lahat yan na-vaccinate na rin.
Ang second clarification ko po, sinasabi rin talaga ni Presidente na may kasunduan sila ni President Xi na meron po tayong prioridad. Meron po talaga tayong prioridad sa distribution ng vaccine na galing po sa China.
Yes, that is true. This was reiterated during the recent visit of Secretary Roque, and if you look at the DFA statement, this was mentioned. We are among the priority countries. Of course, ASEAN in general is included here, but the Philippines in particular. Of course, this means that we have to get ready for the distribution and deployment of the vaccine, and that is why these Chinese pharmaceutical companies that are going to manufacture these vaccines are already have been telling us that what is required really is the cold chain storage facilities around the country, or certain strategic areas around the country, kasi when the vaccine had to be handled very well, otherwise before they can be deployed.
Okay. Naku, napakabuting balita po yan. Maraming salamat, Ambassador Chito, and please join us because I'm sure your colleagues in the Malacanang Press Corps will have some questions for you. Tuloy na natin ang ating open forum. Yusek Roque.
Yes, Secretary Roque from Ronald Reyes of Manila Standard. Ano daw po ang reaction ng palasyo sa latest statement ni Pope Francis on giving rights for same-sex union? Pabor ba ang palasyo dito?
The President has said it over and over again. Pabor po siya sa isang batas na magre-recognize ng civil union sa mga parehong same-sex relationships.
Ang second question po niya from Andreo Cadonso of Bloomberg. Ang question niya, according to the DBM, around the 46.2 billion pesos are waiting for approval from the office of the President. What's causing the delay, and when can we expect the funds to be released?
Well, as I said earlier, sinisiguro lang po ng Office of the Executive Secretary na talagang kinakailangan pong i-release mga pondo na yan. But the assurance is the money is there. and DBM is able and ready to issue what is known as the SARO.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, Yusek. Punta tayo kay Joseph Morong, please. Joseph. Yes. Walang audio.
Hello,
Walang
sir.
audio.
Hi. Sorry. Yeah, there. Good afternoon, sir. Can I go to Ambassador Chito first, please?
As I predicted, you will go to Ambassador Chito. Go ahead, please.
How are you, Ambassador? Nice to see you again.
Kumusta ka? How are you?
Okay naman, sir. Sir, okay. You mentioned that yung China is already administering not just to the healthcare workers, no, but I monitored a report in the BBC that they are also administering, particularly yung Sinovac, to the general population, even if it doesn't have a regulatory approval yet. My question, sir, is that if, number one, yun po ba yung Sinovac yung tinutukoy nyo kanina when you said that China is already administering a vaccine? Yun muna, sir.
Well, I cannot confirm that that's a Sinovac vaccine. I've seen the report. Pero again, this is on a voluntary basis. Those who want to try the vaccine. So kasali pa rin to sa phase 3 trial. Of course, the citizens know that where the status is, but it's very near. It's nearing yung approval. I was just watching a press conference the other day of the health authorities in China, where they reported that 60,000 na yung na-administer nila as part of the phase 3, and so far no adverse reaction, no, that they have detected. And so they're preparing the report now, and I think we will see some announcement in the near future.
Sir, yung 60,000 po, yan po yung, ano pong vaccine yan, sir? Kasi dalawa yata yan, isang Sinopharm, isang Sinovac.
Yes, meron yung dalawa, Sinopharm and Sinovac. I am not competent in terms of I just know what I understand from the press conference. And so those are the two leading candidates, by the way.
Okay. Sir, kung halimbawa, or is there any offer from China to use their vaccine on an emergency basis sa atin? Wala naman.
Well, wala pa dyan yung vaccine eh. So, I think when you have kasi meron tayong our own domestic requirements eh. So the question now is you have to go through that. Now, people who may want, Sinovac I think has applied to conduct yung phase 3 trials that is being evaluated by the health authorities. So the moment approve yan, then of course, on an emergency basis, it should be possible.
Sir, dalawa kasi yung, sorry sir for lingering on this topic. Dalawa sir yun eh, kasi yung in-apply yata, sabi ni FDA Director Domingo kanina, is for the clinical trial. Now, pwede rin natin gamitin for emergency use, if ever?
I will leave that to the health authorities. I can't answer that. I'm the diplomatic side. I facilitate the contact and the flow of information.
Just one last on this.
You have to ask the right person, not me.
Okay, sir. Sir, just one last on this topic. Sir, sabi niyo po na sabi ng China na priority yung Pilipinas na bibigyan. Pero meron po bang pledges in terms of the number of vaccines that they are ready to give? And is this going to be for free?
This is subject now to discussion, no? Where this is a matter that will entail more exchanges and discussion. So I cannot give you a definitive answer right now. But definitely in terms of number, how they will do it, because it depends on they're talking of hundreds of millions in terms of production, no? Dito sa China. So the question is yung distribution and deployment. Of course, the Chinese have also joined the WHO initiative, no? The COVAX system. So that they're doing it on different tracks, bilateral and multilateral. So a lot of it in terms of numbers will depend on their production, no? And I know the Chinese, from all reports, have now been preparing. No? They're preparing their manufacturing facilities for the mass production of vaccine the moment approval is announced. No?
Yes, sir. So, sir, November ang production, and kung kailan siya makakarating sa atin?
Optimistically, November or
Okay.
December. Near future. In the near future is the
Okay.
term they're using.
All right, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Nice to see you again, sir.
Joseph. We go
Nice
back
to
to
see
you,
you.
Sec Roque, please.
Ay, sir, meron pa. Kanti pa.
Round 2 ka
Yun
na, round 2. May oras naman tayo mag round 2, ha?
Okay, sige,
Okay.
sir. Okay.
Go.
Okay.
Okay, Secretary Roque, question from Laila Salaveria. Follow-up dun sa question po ni Joyce. Is the administration saying the 4 billion for DHSUD is enough and there is no need to touch the 9 billion in Intel funds?
Well, gaya po ng sinabi ni Secretary Avisado, no? Ang pondo po talaga sa paggagawa ng mga bahay ay nasa National Housing Authority, at dagdag ko rin na bago tayo umere, kinausap ko po si Secretary Del Rosario para sa mga emergency, yung paggagawa ng mga bahay na nasira ng natural calamities, meron din pong 20 billion budget na nasa NDRMMC.
Opo, ang question from Jam Punzalan of ABS-CBN for Secretary Avisado. May we get your comment and the basis for the 4 billion funding for housing which senators see as a meager compared to the 9.6 billion Intel and confidential funds?
Secretary Avisado? Sec?
Opo.
Yes po. Go
Alam niyo
ahead.
po, hindi po natin pwedeng i-compare yan apple to apple kasi iba naman yung purpose ng housing. Iba naman din po yung confidential fund. Tsaka pagka ganyan po na masisela na klaseng issue, pinapabaya po namin yan, particular sa Office of the President pagka ganyan pong issue. Kasi kami po, hanggang sa allocation ng pondo, kung saan po talaga yung pwede pang lagakan, base po sa budget ceiling, ginagawa po naman talaga namin yan. Hindi lang po ako makakapag-komento kung ano ba talaga, bakit mas malaki pa, dahil wala po sa kapangyarihan po namin yan. Opo.
Thank you, Secretary Avisado.
Thank you very much po. Melo Acuña, please.
Good afternoon, Secretary. Good afternoon, and
Good afternoon.
belated happy birthday.
Thank you very
I
much.
hope you had a wonderful day yesterday.
Yes,
Back
I
to the
did.
salt mines again.
Thank
But
you.
anyway, I was instructed by my colleagues from FOCAP when they heard that the president will face the Malacanang press corps by Zoom. They would just want me to remind you of the standing invitation of FOCAP for the good president to address the foreign correspondents as well.
Well, sa tingin ko naman po, kung pumayag naman ng presidente sa Malacanang press corps, I see no reason why he will not also agree to FOCAP. Pero our practice is FOCAP actually is represented in the Malacanang press corps, and I understand you also form part of the FOCAP, no? So siguro po when it happens, maybe we could include some members of FOCAP also to ask questions to the president.
Yeah, but anyway, we can make arrangements for that. Let me ask the good Secretary Avisado. Secretary, Ambassador Chito Santa Romana mentioned the need for cold chain storage facility to house the vaccines. Will we have the funds for that? Should the vaccines be delivered to us?
Surely, as the sun rises in the east, there will be funds for that because the president will never allow that we will run short of the requirements to make sure that we have the storage facilities for all of these vaccines po.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for this. Now, I'd like to go to Ambassador Chito Santa Romana. Mr. Ambassador, Your Excellency, good afternoon. Good afternoon from Manila. Nice to see you. The spokesman of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was quoted last week that there are mechanisms, agreements on the joint exploration. There will be consultations as well. Would you know if there are scheduled consultations to push through with the joint exploration of resources within the South China Sea or West Philippine Sea? What have you heard?
Well, you know, it's been a year, almost a year, since the first intergovernmental committee that discussed the oil and gas cooperation met, and there was a scheduled meeting or a plan to have a meeting in the first quarter of this year. It got affected by pandemic, and the committee has not been able to meet. So there are discussions, diplomatic discussions going on when it can resume safely. You see, the problem is still how to, where to meet and who will go and how to, the travel plan. So unless it's done virtually,
Yeah.
there are limitations to virtual meeting, particularly on sensitive issues. So those are the issues being discussed right now. So I think, it's two levels: the intergovernmental meetings, and there's also the inter-entrepreneurial meeting. So the companies involved, they can meet if they
Mhm.
if they have the capability to do so. And from what I understand, offhand, it's just that meetings have been going on despite the pandemic. Exactly when and where and how, I have no specific information. So the only obstacle, I think, right now is really time and place and pandemic. when the conditions can move forward. We hope that the necessary meetings can happen soon, but there is no specific time period, and there are diplomatic consultations going on.
Yes. Mr. Ambassador, was there any adverse reaction from the Chinese government when Secretary Al-Kusi mentioned that the president agreed to lift the moratorium for the exploration of our resources in the West Philippine Sea?
Well, the foreign ministry spokesman of China gave a fairly positive reaction. They said that they look forward to cooperation between the two sides in line with the MOU of 2018. So I think there will be more discussions on this, but that's what I know.
Okay. Thank you very much, Melo. We go back to you, Sec Roque, now.
Thank you.
Okay, Secretary, question from Trish Terada of CNN Philippines for Secretary Abisado. Sir, may we know your thoughts about the leaked draft report of the House Committee investigating PhilHealth? Nakasama raw po kayo pinakakasuhan for alleged corruption in the agency.
I'm sorry po, I cannot comment on something that I have no knowledge of. Sorry po. We will wait for that report to come out po.
A question from Virgil Lopez of GMA News Online. Commission on Audit data showed that 949 billion worth of government funds was unused in 2018, 1.233 trillion in 2017, and 1.074 trillion in 2016. How will the government address the underspending of the national budget?
Probably the ones who can be more competent to answer that are the departments concerned. Kasi po, once we have released the funds to the respective departments, it is their duty and responsibility to manage and spend it in accordance with the purpose intended. So I will defer to the secretaries concerned of these departments po.
Opo. Question for Secretary Roque. Several lawmakers lamented the 2.5 billion allocation for COVID-19 vaccines under the 2021 budget, saying it will not be enough to cover the population. Will the PALA support initiatives in Congress to increase the funds for vaccine purchase?
Well, the power of the purse is vested in Congress. We will bow to the wisdom of Congress should they deem it fit to increase the budget for the vaccine. No? And of course, may pagkukuhanan po yan. No? So we hope that Congress will at least confer with the executive kung saan nila kukunin yung pondo para itaas ang budget for the vaccine. But we join Congress in our desire that we should have sufficient funds to pay for the vaccine, which according po to Ambassador Chito is really forthcoming in the near future.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you. Punta tayo kay Pia Renada, please.
Hi, sirs. Good afternoon. Sir, just a quick clarification po sana with Ambassador Chito, if it's okay.
Yes, please.
Ambassador, can I just clarify what you said earlier when you said China would give us priority access to the vaccine, but we need to have cold storage facilities ready and distribution facilities ready. Can I just clarify, is this a condition of China on the Philippines that if you don't ensure these things, we won't get the access?
No, I don't think so. It's not a condition. It's just a reminder that if you get the vaccine and you don't have cold chain storage, then it's useless. So you have to prepare. It's basically it calls our attention on the need for the preparatory work to receiving the vaccine on a priority basis, and the requirement for it to be effective. And that's really the storage is a major issue, because I don't know the situation in the Philippines, but that's why we in our reports also to our headquarters we have conveyed this and to relay it to the health authorities. And I think the health experts are very much aware of this. I just don't know the condition of cold storage in the Philippines. That's why I want to reiterate this necessary condition for effective deployment and effective distribution of the vaccine.
All right. So, sir, for the record, there has been no condition imposed by China on the Philippines for the vaccine.
No, not at all. Actually, we're the ones. Our condition is that it should pass our local requirements.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador. Moving on to spokesman Harry Roque. Sir, just on the issue of Baby River Nasino. Sir, according to court documents on Reyna May Nasino's case, her baby River had to be separated from her less than 2 months after birth because the Manila City jail she was at said that they had no facilities for the baby. And activists do say, as well as most of scientific journals say that babies thrive best when they're with their mothers right after birth. So, sir, is this lack of facilities that affected Baby River's well-being acceptable to Malacanang?
We don't know the circumstance po, no? Again, it's very difficult to comment on something that we have no information on, no? But we will look into the matter, and of course, we realize that unless convicted, you are presumed innocent, and that we will see what reforms can come about because of this experience with this particular incident.
Mm-hmm. Sir, will Malacanang do something like maybe give instructions or find a way to ensure that babies born in jail get to stay with their mothers and have access to the facilities they need?
I will personally take steps to inquire into this, no? Knowing that there's some treaty obligations that will probably have to be complied with, no? But as it stands, I do not know if Manila City Jail has that facility in fact, and we will inquire from the DILG, because it is the DILG that manages the jail for detainees, those who have not been convicted by the courts.
Okay, and sir, last question. This can be answered by either you, sir, or DBM Secretary Avisado. Sir, could we just know the specific reasons why President Duterte is taking so long to approve the 46 billion that Sec Avisado says is pending? I mean, what were the specific concerns that the OES is working on, or is it the President himself who is taking time studying these fund requests?
Well, as I said po, no, sinisiguro lang ng OES na the funds are indeed needed and that it will go to its intended beneficiaries.
Sir, any specific aspect of the request? Because the bill was also something that Malacanang looked at, right? So, is there any problem, sir, with the allocations or
ask again on
issues?
Monday, because I will personally talk to Executive Secretary about this matter.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We go back to Yusek Roque, please.
Apo, question from Sam Edenilla of Business Mirror for Secretary Avisado po. What is the reason for the bottleneck in the release of the Bayanihan 2 budget, and what are the measures being implemented by DBM and other government agencies to resolve this? Magkano po ang magiging allocation for the purchase of COVID-19 vaccine?
Wala pong bottlenecks po. Proseso lang po ang sinusunod natin. Pagka po kompleto lahat ng dokumento, inaakyat po kaagad natin yan sa Office of the President for the corresponding approval. So, pagka sinabi po bottleneck, may problema na is delaying. Wala naman po. Hindi naman din po sabay-sabay silang nagsasubmit ng requirements. Kaya po, as they come, we evaluate and then we elevate to the Office of the President, who has the final say. But we have the funds. The Bureau of Treasury has certified that funds are available. So, ang importante po, hindi rin po naman nauubusan ng pera pa yung mga departments natin. Kaya nga po, ang aming sinasabi sa kanila, pagka hindi pa nalabas kaagad yung approval, use whatever available funds you have para po punan. Pag dumating na yon, idadagdag na naman uli. Ganun lang po yon. Kaysa po ilalagak namin kaagad lahat, ina-analyze po namin kasi in-study po namin yung utilization rate ng mga departments para po alam nila na dapat i-move yung pera dahil nga ang batas ay mag-expire December 19. Plus of course, the other regular programs and requirements that funds released to them must have to be used up on the basis of the requirements of the cash budgeting system. Otherwise, magre-revert po yan. So, hindi po dinidelay. May proseso lang po kasi. At yun lang po ang sinusunod natin.
Opo, Secretary, ang second question po niya para sa inyo, what is the expected timeline of DBM for President Rodrigo Duterte to finally sign the 2021 national budget?
Ayun po, nasa Office of the President po yan. Si Secretary can address that.
Well, inaasahan po natin na mapipirmahan ng Presidente at least on the second week of December kasi ipapublish pa po yan sa dyaryo at saka sa official gazette para maging epektibo at nang sa ganon hindi po tayo magkaroon ng reenacted budget pagdating ng Enero. So on or before the second week of December.
Secretary Roque, ano po ang third question po niya, ano na po ang status ng pending approval of the Office of the President on the budget to be released for DOLE, DSWD, Department of Agriculture, and DOH under the Bayanihan 2 Act?
Tinitignan lang naman po na itong mga budget neto is really justified. But as I said, as again on Monday, I will have a personal talk with the Executive Secretary po.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you. Punta na tayo kay Leia Lesmores, please, of PTV4.
Hi, sir. Good morning po and belated happy birthday, sir.
Thank you.
About lang po sa PhilHealth Red Cross issue pa rin. Follow up lang po sana, sir, kung dahil nga nasabi nila ni President na may pondo naman. Pero ang question, saan nga po kaya ito huhugutin? At moving forward, ano po kaya ang mga pwedeng hakbang ng gobyerno para maiwasan na yung mga ganitong problema?
Gaya na aking sinabi, siguro reconciliation lang ang nagiging problema. Kasi iba-iba nga po yung bayad sa PCR test. Depende kung donated ang machines at ang mga test kits. So sa pondo po, walang problema. So I assure the Philippine National Red Cross the funds are there. It's, I believe, a reconciliation issue. And the President has already spoken, so PhilHealth has to comply and pay at least half at the soonest time possible.
Opo. Sir, on proposed 2021 national budget naman po, nasabi niyo sa isang interview kanina na umaasa nga ang palasyo na by October 28 ay maipasa na ng House at Senate yung budget bill. Pero sa side naman po ng Palace, follow up lang po, Secretary Roque, kailan niyo po tinatarget na makarating sa inyo from Congress yung budget bill? At just, can you give us a picture? Ano po ba yung pinagdadaan ng proseso dyan sa Malacanang kapag nasa inyo na, hawak niyo na yung budget bill?
Alam niyo po kasi, hindi rin ganun kabilis ang pag-review ng budget. Kasi sa budget lang po, may kapangyarihan ng Presidente na gumawa ng tinatawag na line veto. So actually, maybe I should reschedule the time frame. Kinakailangan pala mas maaga because the process of reviewing it entails a line-by-line analysis, no? So I take it back. I think it has to be earlier than the second week of December to give the executive time to review the budget and to see if it will make specific line item vetoes. So I think, I'm sorry, I will rectify and amend my answer. The sooner the better in December, so that we would have ample time to go through it.
Do you think next month po, sir? By November po ba?
That would be ideal, but I think December would be fine.
Opo, sir, may third question lang po. Follow-up lang po dun sa statement ni Pope Francis. I understand kanina nasagot niyo na rin po. Pero under the Duterte administration, do you think may chance po ba na maisabatas o kilalanin itong same-sex union?
Well, what we're talking, yes, it's not same-sex union, but the civil union, no? Recognition of civil union has always been supported by the president. No? Depende na lang yan sa prioridad ng ating Kongreso. Pero with no less than the Pope supporting it, I think even the most conservative of all Catholics in Congress should no longer have a basis for objecting.
Okay, thank you so much, Secretary Roque, and belated happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Yusek Roque?
Secretary, question from... Teka lang po pandali. Question from Dreo Calonso for Secretary Abisado. How much does the government plan to borrow from the Bangko Sentral in 2021 po?
Sorry po, but I will defer to the Department of Finance kasi sila po ang pinagmumula ng pondo po. At sila po ang nangangalap kung saan nila magkukunin yung pondo natin.
Opo. For Secretary Roque, question from Maricel Halidi of TV5. Ano na po ang update tungkol sa pagbabayad ng utang ng PhilHealth sa Red Cross? Kailan ito mababayaran? Do we have a timeline?
Well, I was calling Attorney Giran earlier for an update. If he's listening, please return my call because that's also a question that I want him to answer. Maybe we will feature him on Monday para po siya na magsabi kung kailan nila mababayaran.
Second question po ni Maricel, halos 1 linggo na pong tumigil ang Red Cross sa pagkuha ng swab test. Gaano kalaki ang epekto nito sa pagpapababa ng kaso ng COVID-19?
Well, as I said po, no, malaki ang contribution ng PNRC testing. It's 25%, but we have 114 RT-PCR laboratories and 35 licensed gene expert laboratories. Gone are the days po na we are only dependent on one testing facility, no? So we are still able, we have already done 4,187,385 at hindi naman po bumababa yung average testing natin. It's still stable at 30,000 plus daily.
Question from Aileen Taliping of Abante Tonight. Wala po bang regulasyon ang IATF sa pricing ng PCR testing kasi iba-iba po ang presyo sa swab testing. Ang Philippine Airports Diagnostic Laboratories, they are charging 4,500 for its swab test and not honoring senior citizen discount. Sila po yung mga senior citizen na gusto magpunta sa Boracay.
Well, yan naman po ata ang charge din ng PNRC, 4,500 din kung kinakailangan ng certificate. And of course, kung maghingi ka ng certificate for Boracay, suma total na babayaran din ng PNRC is 4,500. But I enjoin everyone to please observe the discounts which is mandated by law.
Question for Ambassador Santa Romana. Question from Trish Terada of CNN Philippines. When will the distribution most likely begin, Ambassador? And maybe a rough timeline daw po.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ambassador.
Okay, just a while. That's difficult to say. I can only say that wait for the Chinese will make an announcement in the near future, and that they'll start their mass production. And once there is the mass production, then I think there will be distribution. Hopefully before the end of the year, but surely by the first quarter of next year.
Ambassador, question from Celerina Monte of Manila Shimbun. After the Philippine announcement regarding the lifting of the suspension of exploration in West Philippine Sea, was he summoned by the Chinese government to clear on the matter? What was China's reaction over the Philippine decision?
No, I wasn't summoned. The spokesman, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman, gave his reaction in a regular briefing last Friday. And the reaction was that China looks forward to cooperation with the Philippines on oil and gas in accordance with MOU on oil and gas cooperation. I think we have to let the process proceed and see what will happen. But so far, the prospects are quite good.
Ambassador, question from Alvin Baltasar o PBS Radio Pilipinas. Ano po yung timeline kung kailan magiging available sa market ng China ang date kung kailan po makakapag-distribute sa Pilipinas?
I think that's already answered, no? Already
I
answered.
answered that
Yes.
already. Pero ulitin natin, sa China, nag-uumpisa na. In the sense that it's being done on an emergency basis to frontliners, the military, port and airport workers, and I think they're preparing to make an announcement soon on the formal approval of the vaccine and the mass production. So the moment there is mass production, then it's a question of how much will be ready for distribution and deployment. So as I said earlier, hopefully before the end of the year, and certainly in the new year or the first quarter of the new year.
Thank you, Ambassador. Secretary Roque, question from Belia Carriazo of Daily Tribune. Yun daw pong statement ng AFP kina Liza Soberano and Catriona Gray, warning ba ito sa kanila for being left supporters?
Well, tingin ko naman sa statement mismo ng AFP, sinabi naman niya, walang ganon. Pinag-iingatan lang nila sila na baka mamaya magamit sila ng left. Pero naintindihan naman po ng hukbong sandatahan na sila po ay nag-advocate lang ng karapatan ng kababaihan. Pero syempre, ingat din po kasi ang talagang, at alam to ni Ambassador Chito Santa Romana, yung mga mawis po sa Pilipinas, talagang kung merong pwedeng pagsamantalahan, pagsasamantalahan nila.
Opo. Secretary, mukhang last question na po ito mula kay Jenaline Kabiling na Manila Bulletin. Please elaborate daw po on the President's comments about the logistics preparation for vaccine importation and storage. How many and how soon cold storage facilities will the government build for the potential COVID vaccine? And which government agency will supervise this matter?
Huwag po kayo mag-alala, no? Nung inibitahan po namin si Ambassador Chito, meron na pa kaming programa talaga, no? Scheduled programa kung kailan namin isa sa publiko itong mga hakbang na ginagawa ng gobyerno na masiguro na lahat po ng Pilipino ay magkaroon ng bakuna laban sa COVID-19. Sa susunod na linggo po, meron na po tayong initial na mga impormasyon na i-release, pero antayin muna po natin antayin po natin muna yung mga ahensya ng gobyerno na isapinal yung kanilang mga plano.
Okay, yung second question niya, Secretary, basahin ko na lang po. Although nasagot yun na, does the palace support a military officials alleged red tagging and mansplaining of actress Liza Soberano and beauty queen Catriona Gray?
Ang issue po, yung posibleng pagsasamantala ng mga komunista sa mga advokasya ng mga personalidad gaya ni Liza at ni Catriona. Pero wala po kaming problema doon sa mga sinasabi ni Liza at ni Catriona dahil ang ating presidente sinusulong din po ang karapatan ng kababaihan at malinaw po ang track record niya, lalong-lalo na nung siya po ay mayor ng Davao City. Okay, last question na yun. So mga kababayan, unang-una maraming salamat po doon sa ating mga naging panauhin, si Secretary Wendell Avisado and Ambassador Chito Santa Romana. Napakagandang balita po ang binigay ninyo, Ambassador Santa Romana. Unfortunately, we don't have a second round because it's 1:15 already. Maraming salamat din sa ating mga kasama sa Malacanang Press Corps. Maraming salamat sa iyo, Yusek Roque. At maraming salamat muli po sa mga bumati sa aking kaarawan kahapon. Ang aking birthday wish, sana nga po magkaroon na ng bakuna sa COVID. At ngayon po, kinumpirma ng ating ambahador sa China na malapit na po yan. Huwag nyo naman pong isipin na palibasa malapit na ang COVID, magpapabaya na kayo, no? Ang nais po ng Presidente, lahat ng Pilipino abutan ang bakuna. At importante po, habang tayo nag-aantay ng bakuna at ilang tulog na lang po yan, sundin natin ang sinabi ng ating Presidente, mask, hugas at iwas, ingat buhay para sa hanap buhay. Magandang hapon, Pilipinas.